Book of Heaven, Volume 28, Part 4, May 2nd, 1930. How the divine will always runs toward the creature to embrace her and make her happy, and it has the virtue of emptying her of all evils. The race of the I love you in the divine will. My abandonment in the divine fiat continues. Its light eclipses me. Its powerful strength chains me. Its beauty enraptures me, so much as to feel myself nailed, without being able to move from thinking of and looking at a will so holy. Its life knocks out mine, and I get lost in its immensity. But while my mind was wandering within the omnipotent fiat, my sweet Jesus moved in my interior, and clasping me in his arms told me, "My daughter, my divine will always runs as prime act of life toward the creature, and it runs to make her happy, to embrace her, to empty the weight of all human acts. In fact, everything that is not my will in the creature is hard, heavy, and oppressing, and my will empties all that is human, and with its light breath it renders all things light. Therefore, the sign that the soul lives in my divine will is that she feels happiness within herself, because my will is happiness by its own nature, nor can it give unhappiness to one who lives in it, because it does not possess it, nor does it want to or can change its nature. Therefore, one who lives in my fiat feels within herself the virtue bearer of happiness, and in everything she does, she feels a vein of happiness flowing, which renders every act, every pain and sacrifice, light. This happiness carries with itself the emptying of all evils, and it fills the creature with invincible strength, in such a way that, with all truth, she can say, "I can do anything. I can reach anything, because I feel transmuted into the divine will, which has banished weaknesses, miseries, passions away from me. My very will, made happy by its happiness, wants to drink in large gulps its divine happiness, and does not want to have anything more to do with living but of divine will. Unhappinesses, bitternesses, weaknesses, passions do not enter into my will, but remain outside of it. Its balsamic air sweetens and fortifies everything, and the more the soul lives in it and repeats her acts in my divine volition, the more degrees of happiness, of sanctity, of strength and divine beauty she acquires. And even in the very created things, she feels the happiness of her Creator that they bring to her. My divine will wants to make the creature who lives in it feel the nature of its happiness, and therefore it makes her happy in the light of the sun, in the air that she breathes, in the water that she drinks, in the food that she eats, in the flower that cheers her. In sum, In everything, it makes one feel that it can give but happiness to the creature. Therefore heaven is not far from her, but inside of her, wanting to make her happy in everything. Then I continued my round in the creation, to follow the divine fiat in all created things. And everywhere I tried to place my usual I love you, to requite it for its such great love spread in the whole universe. But my mind wanted to interrupt my race of my continuous I love you by saying to me, "But is there in me the life of this I love you that I keep repeating always?" But while I was thinking this, my sweet Jesus, clasping me to himself, told me, "My daughter, have you forgotten that an I love you in my divine will has the virtue that after it is said once, it never stops saying, 'I love you, I love you'? The I love you in my divine will is life, and as life, it cannot cease to live. It must have its continuous act. My fiat does not know how to do finite acts, and everything that is done in it by the creature acquires continuous life. And just as the breath, the heartbeat, the continuous motion are necessary for life in order to live, so do the acts done in my divine will, having their origin in it, change into life. And as life, they acquire the continuation of the act itself, without ever ceasing. Therefore, your I love you is nothing other than the continuation of your first I love you. As life, it wants the nourishment in order to grow. The breath, the heartbeat, the motion, in order to live. And by your repeating your I love you, it feels the heartbeat, the breath, the motion, and it grows in the fullness of love. And it serves to multiply as many lives of love for as many I love yous as you say. If you knew how beautiful it is to see all creation strewn with as many lives of love for as many I love yous as you say. So one I love you calls and demands with insistence another I love you. And this is why you feel a need, a necessity of love, to follow the race of your I love you. True good never remains isolated. More so in my divine will, since it being life that has no beginning and no end, everything that is done in it is not subject either to ending or to being interrupted. Therefore one I love you serves to maintain and call to life another I love you. These are steps of life of love that the creature takes in my own volition. Therefore do not stop, and continue the race of your I love you to the one who so much loves you. Fiat. May 10th, 1930. How all created things are happy because they were created by a divine will. How God loved man with perfect love and gave him complete love, sanctity, and beauty. My little soul continues its course in the works that the divine will created. And while I was looking at the creation, in order to unite myself to the homages that they give to my Creator, I could see how everything was happiness in them. The heavens, happy in their extension, extendable to all points. It seems that their extension says fullness of happiness, and all their stars are degrees of happiness that the heavens possess, such that rising toward their Creator, the heavens glorify Him with the happiness of their extension, and with many degrees of stars that they possess. The sun is happy in its light, in the fecundity of its heat, in the beauty of its varied colors, in the sweetness and distinct flavors it possesses. Oh, how happy it is! How it rises to the One who created it, to bring Him the glory, the homages of so much happiness it possesses. But while my mind was wandering within the many happinesses that the creation possesses, my sweet Jesus told me, "My daughter, all created things are happy. Happy because they were created by a divine will that is in itself eternally happy. Happy because of the office they occupy. Happy in the space in which they find themselves. Happy because they glorify their Creator. Not one thing created by us was created unhappy. Therefore all possess the fullness of happiness. Now, if we poured so much happiness into all creation, in creating man not only did we create him twice as happy, giving him the vein of happiness in the mind, in the gaze, in the word, in the heartbeat, in the motion, in the step, but we gave him, in his power, happiness itself, multiplying it in each good act, word, step, and everything else that he would do. There were no limits of happiness for him, as in created things. To man was given the virtue of growing ever more in happiness. But this, if he would let himself be dominated by my divine will. Without it, happiness cannot reign. Oh, if created things could go out of our fiat, they would instantly lose the happiness, and would change into the most unhappy works. Therefore, if you want to be happy, let yourself be dominated by my divine will, because it alone has the virtue of giving happiness to the creature, and of changing the most bitter things into the sweetest nectar. My daughter, you must know that we loved the creature with perfect love, and therefore, in creating her, we placed in her complete happiness, complete love, sanctity, and beauty, so that the creature might place herself in a contest with us, and requite us with complete happiness, love, and sanctity, in a way that we might delight so much in her as to be able to say, "How beautiful is the work created by us." And in order to be sure that our gifts would not suffer any detriment in the creature, we entrusted her to our divine will, that it might serve her as life, to keep in her our happiness, our love, our sanctity, and beauty, making them always grow. Therefore, all the good of man was bound to our divine will. Once our will is rejected, all goods end. Nor is there greater misfortune than that of not letting oneself be dominated by my divine will, because it alone is the preserver and the call of our goods in the creature. Fiat. May 20th, 1930. How all creation is a member of God, and how it participates in all the divine qualities. The divine will, gatherer of all the acts that belong to it. I was following, according to my usual way, the acts of the divine will in the creation. I comprehend that it is so united with its Creator as to seem like a member that enjoys the union with its body. And by virtue of this union, the member feels the warmth, the motion, the life. But while I was thinking of this, my always lovable Jesus told me, "My daughter, each created thing is one distinct member of mine, and as such, I use it to maintain the order, the life of creation. And I use it in order to make use, by means of it, now of mercy, now of my power, and now of my justice. More so since, the creation being immersed in my divine will, it cannot move or operate if my divine fiat does not give it the motion or the attitude of operating. Now, just as the creation, so is the creature a member of God. And as long as she remains united with God, she participates in all the qualities of God. Like a member attached to the body participates in the circulation of the blood, in the warmth, in the motion of the same body. But who maintains this union as steady, and this member, the creature attached to her Creator, as permanent and in full vigor? My divine will. My will is bond of union and communication, of warmth and of motion, in such a way as to make her feel, at each motion, the life of her Creator. And it places, more than blood, the divine sanctity, the strength, the love, the goodness, in sum, all the qualities of her Creator, in circulation with this member. But if my will is not there, it will be a detached member, which cannot flow to the communication of the body, and if in appearance it seems united, it will be like a paralyzed member, which will live with difficulty, without motion. And it will be of bother and of sorrow for the divine head to have a member and not to be able to communicate the good of its life. After this he added, "My daughter, my divine will is the gatherer of everything that belongs to it. Jealous of its acts, it does not disperse a single one of them, because each of its acts contains an infinite act, one whole entire eternity, an interminability that never ends. Therefore they are acts not subject to being dispersed. And when my fiat forms its acts, the love, the jealousy for its act, is so great that it keeps it on its lap of light as glory and triumph of the power of its operating. Now, when the soul lives in my divine will and encloses her acts in it, she becomes an act of divine will. And then she repeats for herself all the acts that the divine will does. And she gives it the glory, the requital of its divine acts. And oh, how my divine Fiat feels triumphant of this creature, finding in her a pure act of its will. And it makes itself the gatherer of everything that this creature can do. It does not disperse even one breath, because in everything it finds its operating will. And this is enough in order for it to have acts worthy of it. And it loves her so much that it keeps her clasped in its lap of light, to give her the continuous life of its volition, and to receive from her the requital of it. Therefore, my daughter, be attentive to receive this life of divine will, so as to be able to say, "Life of divine will you give me, and life of divine will I give you." Fiat. June 2nd, 1930. How the divine will is peace and security. Doubts and fears. Jesus, the only author of the law. Necessity of the comings of Jesus. Lack of confidence, the weak act of our centuries. I was feeling all oppressed because of the privations of my sweet Jesus. Oh God, what pain! Its pain is without mercy, without relief, without support. If Jesus is missing, everything is missing. Therefore one feels that the life of the one who can give life is missing. It is pain that converts the poor human being all into voices that call the one who can give it life. It is pain of light that reveals with more clarity who Jesus is. But while I was swimming in the hard pain of his privation, another sorrow added, which hammered my poor intelligence. They had told me that some were doubting about my writings, for in them one could find that Jesus had kissed me, embraced me, and had come to me almost daily. My poor mind could not hold up, and speaking nonsense, I was saying, "See, my love, what it means for you not to make yourself seen and known by all. If you did so, they would be caught in the net of not being able to be without you, and they would catch you into not being able to be without them." I felt tortured by doubts, by fears, which it is not necessary to say on paper. And my sweet Jesus, having compassion for me, all goodness, told me, "My daughter, calm yourself, calm yourself. You know that I have never tolerated in you doubts and fear, which are old rags of the human will. My divine Fiat, wherever it reigns, does not admit these miseries, because by its nature it is peace and security." and so it renders the soul, who lets herself be dominated by its light. Therefore, I want from you nothing but that your breath, your heartbeat, your whole being be no other than my will and love. Love and divine will, united together, form the greatest offering, the most beautiful homage that the creature can give to her Creator, the act that most resembles our act. Therefore, let us remain at our place of always loving each other, and of never interrupting our love. A divine will always fulfilled, and a love never interrupted, is the greatest thing that can be found in heaven and on earth, which is only of our divine being, and of one who gives himself prey to our will. And besides, my daughter, why do you afflict yourself so much because of what they said? I am the author of the laws, and no one can subject me to any law, and therefore I do whatever I want and what most pleases me. To dispose of souls, to fulfill with one a design of mine, with one another, is a right that I have reserved to myself alone. And besides, which is greater, to receive me in the sacrament every day, to enter into their mouth, descend into their stomach, and maybe even into souls full of passions, in order to communicate my life, my blood, to mix it with their blood, or to give a kiss, an embrace, to one who loves me and lives only for me. Oh, how true it is that the human sight is short, and they make the great things small, and the small great, for the only reason that they are not common to everyone. Furthermore, everything that has passed between me and you, the many intimacies, the many excesses of my love, my repeated comings, was required by the decorum of my divine will, which I was to make known through you. Had I not come often, how could I tell you so many things about my divine will? Had I not made my dwelling in your heart as my living temple, my lessons would not have been so continuous. Therefore they should comprehend that everything I have done to your soul was to serve my divine will, which deserves everything. And it was to serve, in hearing my so many loving condescendences, to make them comprehend how much I love the creature, and how much I can love her, in order to elevate the creature to my pure love, and to the full confidence which she must have toward the one who loves her so much. In fact, if there isn't full confidence between me and the creature, they cannot be elevated to live in my divine will. Lack of confidence always places an obstacle to the union between creator and creature. It is the wing clipper of the flight toward the one who loves her so much. It makes her live at the earth's level, and even though she does not fall, it makes her feel vividly her passions. More so, since lack of confidence has been the weak act in the course of the centuries. And sometimes even good souls have drawn back in the journey of virtues because of lack of confidence. And I, in order to remove this torpor, that the specter of the lack of confidence produces, wanted to show myself with you as all love, and in an intimate way, more than father and daughter, in order to call back not only you, but all others, to live as my children, as though rocked in my arms. And I have enjoyed, and so have you, how beautiful it is to have the creature as all love and all trust with me. I can give whatever I want, and she has no fear of receiving what she wants. So, once true confidence is placed in order between me and you, the greatest obstacle to letting my divine will reign in their souls is removed. Therefore, my daughter, I know where my aims tend to, what they must serve for, what I do, great and beautiful, when I choose a creature. What do they know? And this is why they have always something to say about my operating. And not even my short life down here was spared, when my most holy humanity was in their midst, and I was all love for them. And yet, if I drew too close to sinners, they had to say that it was not decorous for me to deal with them. And I let them talk, and without giving importance to their talking, I did the facts. I drew closer to sinners. I loved them more, in order to attract them to love me. If I did miracles, they had something to say, because they believed I was the son of Saint Joseph. They had to say that the promised Messiah could not come from a carpenter, and they kept arousing doubts about my divine person, so much so as to form clouds around the sun of my humanity. And I aroused the little breezes to get rid of the clouds, and I reappeared more blazing with light in their midst, in order to accomplish the purpose of my coming upon earth, which was redemption. Therefore, do not be surprised that they have found something to say on the way I have conducted myself with you. And even though they have formed clouds around the operating I have had with you, I will arouse my little breezes to get rid of these clouds. And if they love the truth, they will know that the way I have conducted myself with you, even though I have not used it with other souls, was necessary to our love, because it was to serve our very will, in order to make it known, and to make it reign. Then he added with a more tender tone, My daughter, poor ones, they are not used to walking in the fields of the light of my divine will. Therefore it is no wonder that their intelligence has remained as though dazzled. But if they get used to looking at the light, they will see clearly that only my love could reach such extent. And since I love so much that my divine will be known, in order to let it reign, I wanted to be exuberant in the excess of my love, which I contained in my heart. Even more, everything I have done with you can be called the preludes of what I will do to those who will let themselves be dominated by my fiat. However, I tell you that all those who had something to say about my humanity when it was on earth, and did not surrender to believing in the sanctity of my works, remained empty of the good that I came to offer to all. and remained outside of my works. So it will be with those who, in addition to talking on the how and the way of what I have said, but if they do not surrender, they too will remain on an empty stomach, and outside of the good which with so much love I wanted to offer to all. Fiat. You have reached the end of the Book of Heaven, Volume 28, Part 4. Fiat.